it sounds like mindfulness really has an impact beyond just the dating phase of things. Like it seems like it really trickles into like other aspects of your life as you become a more mindful person. Because like, how does that help with obviously like, relationship stuff, but also like interpersonal relationships?
Mm-hmm. I think it goes back to what you mentioned before, this idea of taking ownership of how you're showing up and how you're contributing to either the health or the distress of any connection. When, we're all not perfect, right? Humans are flawed, and we are really limited by the skills that we were taught to us or modeled for us. It's all comes down to awareness of like, what are our limits and what are our gifts? And when we show up to a relationship, just being clear about that, not in any way that's self-deprecating or even demanding of the other person that they need to change or anything. You're just like, hey, mindfully, without judgment, this is what I'm working with. I got some great bits and I got some parts that need improvement. How about you? Can we balance each other out here? Can we move forward with accepting both sides of us, the dark and the light? And
Right.
Can we enjoy life despite that constant progress?
Yeah, I do wonder if there's like a fear, because you mentioned about we're obviously imperfect. So in the course of dating, like, for example, I might go out there and I know, okay, the person I'm going to be dating, they're going to have their own flaws, but I'm going to be willing to take a look at them and accept them as they are. But I wonder if we worry so much about what our flaws are that we think we're therefore not going to be good enough. And that makes us more anxious and less apt to want to even go out there and try,
Mm-hmm, for sure. So this reminds me of another part of my story. After that breakup with Marco, and I realized, hey, there's something about the way that I'm showing up that I need to really dig into looking at myself and say, well, what am I doing and what am I not doing that I can change, that I have control over to make a different choice? So I had all that awareness. I went back out dating. I ended up going out with someone, and wouldn't you know that the awareness alone wasn't enough. The same type of breakup happened all over again. I missed the red flags all over again. And that's when I realized that we've been doing things the way that we always have for so long that our brain just does it automatically. And, this is a big part of neuroplasticity, of like this idea that like the brain does default to the easiest paths, but we can create new paths based on where we place our attention. So that's why I created a journal form that I would fill out. I made a spreadsheet for myself because I'm just like very organized like that. So I was like, okay, obviously, just because I looked at my trauma and I know what it is now, it's still not enough. I need to literally rewire my brain consistently and train myself to look out for these things that I know aren't going to get me what I want. So I made a list of questions. And the reason I'm bringing this up now is that one of those questions was, what insecurities are coming up? All those thoughts that say, oh, they have too much money for me, or I'm not sexy enough for them. Their last partner, had XYZ. I don't have that. It's not going to work. Those are all our negative critic in our heads telling us to just give up. But what if we took time after a date to look at the things that negative critic was saying with mindful awareness and curiosity, instead of just kind of letting them always be there on autoplay in the back of our mind?
Right.
What if we let them come front and center with kindness and compassion and say, oh, even though you're kind of mean, you're still me. And I want to listen to you, And then you just start debating them. You open it up and say, okay, you say I'm not good enough for them. What's the evidence here? Just because so-and-so had a Porsche and I don't, what does that mean? What does that have anything to do with our long-term compatibility? You start to kind of challenge this critic with logic, and you start to see, I don't actually have to believe this critic. And if you do that enough, suddenly the voice in your head starts getting lighter and lighter. It's almost like you're unplugging the microphone. It's still going, it's still talking, but it's not commanding the room anymore.
I try to stress that to guys that like when you're going through the process of, I guess, relearning how to date, that like, because people say, how do you get so confident? Like the real secret is that it's not that I don't still have like apprehension or nervousness or anxiousness. It's just I learned to look at like all the other evidence out there that shows that I'm wrong, to where it's like that becomes the louder noise than any momentary doubt I have. But in the beginning, it's like that doubt is what's going to like be the most loudest megaphone in your brain. And it's funny you mentioned your story, because mine was the same way in terms of I was horrible at dating. And then I started studying up on like the ins and outs of like female attraction and like what women are looking for and then what I was doing wrong. And like I had taken a semester off from school because I was doing a touring play, but I had 5 months to just kind of basically study up, and I wasn't doing this play. So I got back to school the next year, like, man, I know everything to do, blah, blah, blah. And then the next year I get connected with a friend of mine. I'd been friends with for like 3 years. She starts showing interest, and I'm like, this is going great. And then those same old patterns I used to do popped up and ruined it. And I was just like devastated. But it's like, I couldn't just go off of book knowledge. I had to actually like regularly put in the work. And that's what started me doing this stuff, was like, I wrote a book about all the things to not do, because I had to really sit down and analyze what are the things that I'm doing consistently that are like messing these things up. And that's what helped. That's what started this. But like, yeah, like you have to do that work. Like, you can't just read stuff, listen to stuff, and then be like, I got it, and then think you're good. It's like, it does take practice. And I think we're not in the habit of trying to give like an overnight, like say these 3 things or these 3 thoughts, and then boom, you'll be fine. It's like, that's not really how this works. You have to put the work in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the more you allow yourself to notice the pattern, the more you believe it. Because that's what our brain does. Like, that negative critic is really, it's got our back. It's trying to help us. It probably noticed sometimes in our past where certain things happened and we got hurt. So it's always on the hunt for that next threat, and it's just warning us. It noticed patterns back then. We can notice patterns for it now. And I think that's why journaling after a date, like every time you come home from a date, you might have a few different insecurities that you write down, but there might be the same one that keeps coming up. And then you'd be like, Lauren, why do you consistently think you don't have enough money? Girl, you have tons of money. Like, get over yourself. Like, like you almost like it becomes a laughable thing when you see, wow, this makes no sense. When you, am I making sense here? It's like, the more
it's like you
see it like, come up,
when you start to see, you start to notice, like, because it's like you'll start to, and a similar exercise that I used to do is, I would think at one time, people aren't going to like me for how I look or the way I am, or I'm too nerdy or I talk too fast, whatever. And I started looking at like, okay, but wait, there's guys out there that literally have your same build and look just like you, that the girls you want are getting with. So it ain't that you don't have it, because you do, but you're thinking that you don't, which is why they're winning and you're not. And it's like, you have to really start basically like being your own, it's almost like you're on trial for yourself, and you're both defense and prosecution, and your prosecution team has to come in and say, this is all the evidence that shows that you were in fact wrong. And like, as you do that, you start to be like, oh, I need to shut the heck up, because I'm just making all these complaints about myself, and most of them aren't actually true. Like, oops.
Yes. You nailed it. One of the other questions that I asked myself after a date was, what did I love about myself? And it's the first, I think it's like the third question on the form that I have, because when you come home from a date, it's like, at least for me, I go into that state of, oh my gosh, when are they going to text me back? What if they ghost me again? And it becomes about them again. I give them all the power. But coming back to that place of self-love, like you're saying, like building up your confidence, reminding yourself that like, I really want to celebrate the fact that I showed up authentic today. And even though I was anxious, I did a really great job of trying to be present and not getting wrapped up in my anxious thoughts. Or I really love that I had the guts to wear something that was comfortable instead of wearing the low cut boob shirt that I thought he would want me to wear, like little things like that. And when you start out your journal session from that place, it just helps you to see, oh yeah, I'm my number one cheerleader. And if that critic tries to make an appearance to tell me that I'm not worthy, that cheerleader's already here. So there's more than one person at the party, basically.
You's a bad boy, but you can't stop, won't stop. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high class man. You a high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class